in action. Rules that keep things going smoothly and fairly. Rules that help us get where we're going. Help us work together, play together, and live together. Of course, in small groups, we sometimes get along without rules.
But there aren't any loud noises, just the sounds of working. We call these work sounds. Listen.
When many of us play together, rules make the game. Rules help us play fair with each other, so all can enjoy the game. Rules that apply equally to all. It's up to each one of us to know the rules and follow them.
Why do you suppose this room is so quiet? Perhaps we can learn from the teacher.
At New York's Madison Square Garden, a city college quintet races five fast and fancy red boots from the University of Oregon. It's the opening contest of an intersectional doubleheader, and New York draws 2 points worth of first blood.
And you know, we have found that knowing when to be quiet is a part of growing up.
16,000 fans watch the boys from the Pacific Coast as they try to stem the onslaught of City College fever. But it's all over when Silverstein shoots off the hardwood, decays the ball, and the ball game for CCNY 38-36.
Because a quiet room helps all of us learn.
How do you do it?
Well, each of us knows how to work quietly. That's very important.
But the evening sport is a long way from the locker room. In the second game, a team of Northwestern Wildcats is matched against St. John's University of Brooklyn. The lads from Illinois are off to a springboard start when Bob Coble eases Allen into the basket to take the lead.
Do you think you could walk this quietly? Listen to this work sound.
But tribal warfare comes to the gymnasium as the St. John's Indians retaliate with 2 points. From now on, the game is touch and go, with 10 men helping to get it there. A beautiful display of teamwork, and Northwestern gets in the number column with sharp shooting Bob Coble doing the honors.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Learn the Game, where you learn if you got an F for effort. And today we're going to be talking about the forgotten 80s NBA point guards that nobody seems to remember them being forgotten. But really, just the aspect of there's all these great players that people forget about over time. But before we get into that, how are you today, Politicus Rex?
Breathing.
I know that you are. You have an illness that is pretty severe for some people.
It's annoying because we got like 9 inches of snow outside.
Yeah. All right. Well, here's Casual Hoops Head. We've dropped a link for anyone who wants to call in. Please do if you're interested. But Casual Hoops Head, I guess since he's here and he's talking about Mark Price, why do you think that Mark Price should be recognized as one of the greatest point guards of all time? And why do you think that these guys are forgotten about in the first place?
Well, Mark Price, I mean, if Mark Price played today, he'd, basically be very similar to Steph. His skills were made for this era, just like Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf. When they played, the game wasn't as wide open, and guards didn't get that kind of leeway with outside shooting. But he was super quick, and I don't know if y'all remember, but the first time Mark Price played Allen Iverson, when Allen Iverson was a rookie, he smoked Iverson. You can look that up on YouTube, see the game. he absolutely tore Iverson apart. But no one remembers Mark Price, at least they remember the name. Very few people remember his game.
Yeah, is it just the aspect that these guys are great? They could play in today's era. I mean, there's a few other guys that we're going to talk about moving forward, but if you want to talk about the Sidney Moncriefs or the Pat Levers of the world, why are they so impressive? Is it because they could play in today's NBA? A lot of people think that guys of the past can't.
Well, every guy that played in the NBA can play pretty much at any time. It's just because of rules, they may do a little better or a little worse, but the natural skill set is still always there. There's this whole myth. Like, I had someone on one of the videos do this big long, thing about obviously players of today could play in the past. They would just play more simply, but there's no guarantee that players from the past could play today. And in fact, it's the opposite. Players back in the day were not allowed to use their athletic ability. So casual fans today, that all they do is look at a 60-year-old film snippet and say, well, they weren't athletic. Well, they were athletic. They weren't allowed to use it because of the strict rules of the day. People act like, just people learned how to jump in like the last 30 years or something. The Olympic record, I believe, for the long jump, which is what, when you jump from the free throw line and dunk it, like, is the big thing in basketball to demonstrate your athletic prowess. That's a long jump. And I believe the Olympic record for the long jump still stands from 1968. So if guys are so much more athletic today, why is there a 50-something-year-old record still on the books for jumping?
Yeah, I also was confused because I remember when I was 8 years old or 10 years old, that people thought they were saying how jumping what's the new thing? No, but but absolutely, you have these records from way farther back from than what people like to admit, and people just want to say automatically that all of sports science, all of the advances in training, the skills trainers with the unicycle and juggling heavy 10-pound balls through cones on the basketball court is what has made the NBA and its players so great, and basketball at large. But what's something about Mark Price that, I know you said he would play like Steph, but what's a play that really stands out from Mark Price that sticks out in your head, or a moment just in total?
The big thing about Mark Price, the thing that he actually added to the game of basketball that was a novelty and happened occasionally for the 60 years before him, was the splitting the defense on a pick and roll. That's something that he absolutely perfected. And as someone who used to do that on occasion, it totally breaks the defense. It's something that when you defend a pick and roll and how they coach it and how you're supposed to, your philosophy of how you're supposed to defend it. If you got a guy that can slip the pick and roll and split the defenders, you basically have created a 4-on-2 going to the basket in a set offense. So you've created a fast break mismatch in a half court set. And that's a huge deal. And he was the one that actually started doing it on a regular basis, like very frequently to where you actually couldn't properly defend a pick and roll against Cleveland because he was so great at splitting the defenders on the pick and roll. I mean, that's something that even Isaiah didn't do very often.
Yeah.
And then obviously the shot, I was at games where he would pull up from just inside the half court circle, the logo as they call it, and drain one. I mean, before like Brad Doherty and Hot Rod Williams would even get into position under the basket. He could do all that stuff. He could sit there and probably seen him in pregame warm-ups, just, drain like 15 in a row from 3-point distance, not all in one spot, not like a 3-point contest, just standing there shooting, but dribbling around, pulling off for a shot, hitting it. Someone gives them the ball back, go between the legs, around the back, move around the key, and then shoot from another spot on the arc and then hit that one and just keep going. And every shot was always exactly the same. His form was impeccable. And a 90% free throw shooter as well.
Yeah, which is fantastic. So that's rarefied air in itself. We got a comment asking, McHale versus Pettit, single year peak. Who do you take? I'll answer mine first. I take Bob Pettit. I don't think it's particularly close.
No.
I can give some explanation, but he was the star player on his team. Not that Kevin McHale wasn't a great player, but Bob Pettit, I believe, even though they didn't play in the same era, was probably a better rebounder. I think he probably had a better mid-range shot, and then he still had the capability to play down low. But I think holistically, I think he had more things he could do, and he was able to showcase his capabilities as the star of his team. What about you?
Well, yeah, Bob Pettit's 2-time Hall of Famer. I mean, two-time league MVP.
Yes.
I mean, he carried a franchise. He beat Russell Celtics. Now McHale was a Hall of Fame level power forward that is known for having, the man of 1,000 moves in the low post. There was one part of his game, much like the Rodman versus Barkley debate that you had yesterday. Rodman skill-wise could not compete with Charles Barkley across the board. But in his particular specialty, he was one of the top 2 or 3 ever. Same thing with McHale. McHale across the board does not compare with Bob Pettit. Bob Pettit compares more with Larry Bird than he does with Kevin McHale because he's carrying a franchise for a decade. And 2-time MVP. Bird, 3-time MVP. Pettit, it's like I told you, once again, to quote your debate from yesterday, something I said in the comments was, while Rodman was focusing on comparing himself to Barkley, matching up with Barkley was mentally matching up with Jordan.
Yeah.
And that's the difference. McHale only 1 year carried the Celtics. That was the year that Bird was out with the foot surgeries. And then he started having his own issues when he became the main guy and had to carry the load. He started getting all the injuries. So there's a durability issue there. Pettit never had that issue. Pettit was an Iron Man.
Yeah.
So even though McHale's low post moves were far better than Pettit's overall game was superior to McHale, and his status on his team, in the league, and historically was far more than McHale's. But I can see the question. one for just one season, not talking career. But the thing is, with I even if you want to say peak like one season, I mean, I believe 1 year Pettit like averaged like 30 and 20.
Yeah,
So I'll take that.
absolutely. What about to bring it back to the point guards? What about Fat Lever? What was so great about him? I'm not really I really don't know too much about Fat Lever other than his name was Fat, and Lever
Lafayette.
together, which I think Lafayette. Okay.
His name was Lafayette Lever. They called him Fat Lever for short.
Lafayette.
He was not fat. He was point guard for Denver. Anyone that knows 80s basketball knows that the Denver Nuggets of the 80s was the first modern offense.
Mhm.
They were running gun, shooting threes, shooting 7 seconds. They had three 20-point a game scorers. They had the record for most points in a game.
Yeah, I believe they have the single season record for most points per game also.
Yeah. Everyone knows the big score names. People know Hall of Famer Dan Issel. They know Kiki Vandeweghe. They know Hall of Famer Alex English. You had guys like Calvin Nat. You had all these scorers. But the point guard was Fat Lever. Now, he played college ball at Arizona State he was backcourt, one of the greatest college backcourts of all time with Byron Scott.
Yeah.
But Fat Lever was the one that made that offense go. But because he wasn't part of the scoring end of that famous first modern offense, Doug Moe, the coach, way before its time, understood the 3-point line, understood where the game would be in 30 years, and started playing that way. And actually got to the Western Conference Finals one year and were up on the Lakers. And Alex English broke his shooting hand. And that was the end of their season. Lakers went on to the finals, and I believe they won the championship that year. I believe that was 87.
Which player do you think was more valuable to their team, Mark Price or Sidney Moncrief?
Mark Price, because of the offense that they ran. What Cleveland ran in the 80s was predicated off of Mark Price and was the textbook conventional. People, this is the thing that people don't understand. When you were watching Cleveland and Chicago in the 80s, before it became Chicago and Detroit, when you were watching Chicago and Cleveland, you were watching the changing of the game in real time. That is where eras switched, where it changed. Cleveland had the best record in the league a couple of times, playing a very traditional game where every single role, all 5 positions, played traditionally exactly what you would, if you opened up a dictionary and read point guard, center, small forward, power forward, what you would read in the dictionary was how they played. They played the most traditional game and were the best team in the league during the regular season doing so. But then once the triangle came to Chicago, they started beating Cleveland and then went on, beating Detroit and then into the championship competition. But when they were struggling and fighting in the late 80s, that was when the triangle was just trying to be implemented. And you were starting to see the difference where the athleticism of Jordan and then the emergence of the athleticism of Pippen and Grant were starting to take over the traditional fundamental game that Cleveland played. And that was really the beginning of the changing of the guard from 80s basketball to 90s basketball.
Yeah. What about Sidney Moncrief? We got another question from JSK we'll get to in a second, but it's not really on topic. But since we're on topic, Sidney Moncrief is known for both his offensive and defensive prowess. What really do you think leaves him out of a lot of all-time great guard conversations in respect to at least modern day basketball talk? I feel like he is, or it seems like from my observation, that he's not really talked about as much as a lot of these other guys.
Well, that whole team isn't talked about.
Yeah.
The Milwaukee Bucks of the 80s were better than the Milwaukee Bucks of the 70s.
Yeah.
They didn't win a championship because they ended up going against, Moses Malone's Sixers and then Larry Bird's Celtics, two of the greatest teams ever put together, is who they lost to and missed out on finals. But they won, it was either 7 or 8 straight division titles. I believe they went to 3 straight Eastern Conference finals. And their lineup was just absolutely stacked with talent, top to bottom. Yeah. They had the one year, I believe, they had the Defensive Player of the Year with Sidney Moncrief. They had the Sixth Man of the Year with Ricky Pierce. They had the guy that would end up winning 3 straight three-point contests with Craig Hodges. And none of those 3 were even their best player. Their best player was Cummings.
Yeah.
So and then, you have a Hall of Famer at 2 Hall of Famers at center. You had an older Jack Sikma. And then, oh my gosh, and it gets me mad because I forgot this center's name last week as well. Do you remember them?
No, I don't. Let me look.
It drives me crazy. 6'11", 270 out of St. Bonaventure. Started with Detroit and then went to Milwaukee during their run. But in any case, they were a real powerhouse team. And,
Bob Lanier?
Yes, Bob Lanier. And the problem was the emergence of Michael Jordan at the shooting guard position coincided directly when it became obvious that Michael Jordan was the best shooting guard in the league. It was the same year Sidney Moncrief, who was the 2-time Defensive Player of the Year. They had the award for 2 years. He won it both years. And then a year after that, he had a severe knee injury that ended up ending his all-star career. He continued playing, finished with Atlanta in 1990, I believe. But that was the end of his all-star run. He was all-star 5 years in a row. And he was the best 2-way shooting guard in the NBA for the first half of the 80s. Then the same year he gets hurt, Jordan explodes. The year after his foot injury. And he has, 37 points a game and just playing outrageous. And basically people forgot about Moncrief.
Yeah. Tidwell mentions that since you've left primetime late night television, that you're here discussing basketball with me as you being David Letterman. So thank you,
If I was as
Tidwell.
tall as Letterman, I would have had a longer career.
Casual Hoops had asked, speaking of Cummings, I believe he was the only player to average more points than Jordan in a playoff series.
Yeah, that was also like I think it was literally by percentage points.
Yeah.
I think in if I remember correctly, in all realism, it wasn't even a point difference. It was something like that. It was, I don't remember the exact numbers, but I think it was, something like 28 points to like 28.4 or something.
Yeah.
But yes,
Yeah.
that is true. He's the only person to outscore Michael Jordan in a playoff series. And that was when Jordan was a rookie.
Just to go
Elvin
off on the
Hayes.
side. Yeah.
I take Elvin Hayes as my starting point guard over anyone except Tim Duncan. And if I could play Duncan at center and Elvin Hayes at forward, that would be my all-time starting lineup. I would love to have those two together.
Wow.
Elvin
You just
Hayes
think
is very
Elvin-
much slept on.
You think that he, I know he's an all-time rebounder, top 10 rebounder in points for a career, if I'm not mistaken. Do you think that supersedes some of Kevin Garnett's dominance with the rebounding titles he got, defensive player of the year?
Elvin
awards,
Hayes
and
got
all that?
rebounding titles too. And Elvin Hayes was even had a teammate who also won rebounding titles. So remember that. They're splitting rebounds on that team. You
Gotcha.
put Elvin Hayes on an expansion team like Garnett, where he's the only guy. Elvin Hayes averages 30 and 20
Yeah.
for a decade.
Do you think he was as good of a defender as Kevin Garnett?
Yes. It was a different time. You played a different kind of defense.
Mm-hmm.
Elvin Hayes was one of the 6'9" Louisiana boys. When you talk about power forwards and centers from Louisiana, you got Karl Malone, Elvin Hayes, Bob Pettit, and then if you want to throw Bill Russell in there, they're all from Louisiana. They're all 6'9". They're all in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, please feel free to call in if you're watching. We have that streamer on the back, very articulate and concise, explaining. If you want to call in, hit the StreamYard link. So you're more than welcome to call in and have a conversation. What about Norm Nixon, somebody who I think is widely forgotten about, just superseded for a lot of his time due to Magic Johnson's emergence?
Same thing as Moncrief. Yeah, I mean, people forget. If you put up as a poll,
Mhm.
how many or 4,000 subscribers would get it correct when you asked who was the starting point guard on the Los Angeles Lakers for their first two championships in the 80s?
Yeah.
I think practically 80% would say Magic Johnson. Magic Johnson was not the starting point guard for the Lakers for the first two championships. Norm Nixon was, and Norm Nixon was an all-star. And Norm Nixon led the team in assists. And in 1982, when they won the second championship, he led the team in scoring. Not Magic, not Kareem. Norm Nixon did. But then, he gets traded to the wasteland that is the Clippers, and he's forgotten.
Why do you think that trade happened, or why did that trade happen?
Because it's professional basketball and money is the main issue. And having Magic as your starting point guard gets you more publicity and more money than having Magic at bouncing between point guard, shooting guard, small forward, power forward, and for one game, center.
Yeah. Who's another one that you find to be vastly
Mo Cheeks
forgotten
has
about?
been forgotten because of Allen Iverson.
Yeah.
But when you talk about point guards for Philadelphia, Mo Cheeks has a championship. Mo Cheeks retired as the all-time. If you say, okay, John Stockton's the all-time steals leader. Okay, who did he take the record from? Mo Cheeks.
Yeah.
The dude was the all-time steals leader and a champion when he retired. Now, when you say point guard for the Sixers, all anyone says is Allen Iverson.
Yeah.
And Mo Cheeks was actually his coach at one point.
What about Gus Williams? I know that he won the championship in 79, I believe. Shout out to Pierre Lynch. If I don't know if he's even still alive. Last time I talked to him, he was having some health issues. But what about Gus Williams? It's really a kind of transient kind of period within the late 70s and 80s. He was having some contract issues and stuff. But
well, the big thing with Gus is revered by a generation of players more than he's revered by fans. Because before, you see, now in the modern era, this is the gym era. Nobody plays on outdoor courts anymore. They play inside in gyms where they can shoot 3-pointers all day. Before you could play in gyms, all the courts used to be outdoors. It was a playground game. 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, it was a playground game. And during the summer leagues and out in the playing on the playground, Gus Williams was revered and renowned as one of the greatest players in the world on the playground. And then obviously he was a solid NBA player for a decade. But that is the thing. I remember when I had Bullets season tickets and he got traded, came to the Bullets. It was like a big thing. It was like, oh my God, we've got, Gus Williams, because DC, much like New York, is a town that we respect playground players. It's not just, whoever you see, on ESPN's top 10, those are all of the greatest players in the world, and that's the end all be all, and that's it. We recognize playground legends as well as a viable sport unto itself. And he was greatly respected because of his playground game. And it, there used to always be the joke, where we might be in a game. And I did this actually a lot back in school, where in a regulation school game with referees and all that and the coaches, I was an average player at best. I rarely started. But then after the games on Friday, then on the weekend, we go out to the playground, and the same guys that were all conference in high school, I would embarrass on a daily basis on the playground because I was more of a playground player like Gus. And you got a different kind of respect when you were a playground player back then. Now there really aren't playground players.
Yeah.
So that whole genre has sort of faded away with time. So I don't even know if young players can understand Gus's impact.
There's still, I know, or I haven't talked to him really for some time, but I knew a guy who was a street ball tournament player in Texas. Somebody, I wouldn't say I was good friends with him, but I would talk with him often for some time. He worked at the corner store that I would go to quite a bit. And I know when I was a kid, and there was a lot of street ball playing, particularly in the summertime. But yeah, I don't know about today. And the guy I was talking to was around my age. But I don't know about the culture continuing to grow in respect to street ball. I don't know if kids go outside anymore. I don't think so. But then again, I don't really go to to courts, outside courts anymore either. Being a
Well, yeah,
man with
well,
a
I mean,
family.
that's the thing is now AAU
Mhm.
has sucked everyone in. So the advantage to AAU and why it got the power it did. Number one, it was backed by the college coaches because it made their life easier. But it meant you got to play indoors all summer in the air conditioning
Yeah,
with coaches. So you got to use the school gyms, which the schools made more money because you had to pay for
Yeah.
those gyms. When I grew up, AAU was a thing, but it was much more limited. And a lot of basketball camps, the smaller regional camps, were actually held outside. I used to teach free throws at a number of different camps around DC, and almost all of them were outdoor weekend camps.
yeah,
They don't do that anymore. You're in a gym and the whole, it's all that. That's why I kind of laugh when you say, "Oh, players are so much better today." It's like they're really not. Certain individual skills they've prioritized. That doesn't make you a better basketball player. I
yeah.
always sit
Like
there and laugh when I
units.
watch these YouTube videos where it'll be some coach, and it's not a hack. I mean, this is a reputable coach, a guy that played in the NBA or high level college himself. And these guys are sitting here and they're showing, do this move and that move off of this jab step or off of this plant, and then you can go this way, or you can get the guy turning, and you got this move, or you can spin off of it, and you got this move to make. Teaching all these individual moves, dribbling the ball. And I remember I was a student at a camp, and they were trying to teach me a move, and I kept fumbling the footwork. And that was back when they called traveling, so the whistle would blow every time I tried to do it. And I couldn't get the footwork right. So finally, it came that, and the coach wanted me to do the move again, and it was like a staged scenario. And rather than do the complicated move I couldn't get right, I just whipped a pass to the guy standing under the basket, and I got in trouble. And I'm like, I just passed for a layup. How am I in trouble?
Yeah,
And it's like, that was when I started to realize, man, American basketball is starting to take a turn.
yeah. I remember I spent $1,000 to learn how to unicycle and juggle 10-pound balls and go between cones. And most of the time I was learning how to unicycle. I came pretty good at that. Anyway,
I can dribble
no.
a tennis ball like or I can speed dribble a racquetball against the side of the, against the mat on the wall in the gym like you wouldn't believe. All that stuff it all just cracked me up. It was like I would always sit there and there'd be like 4 of us at each station doing drills, doing spiders or doing, whatever drill there is. And there's one where you stand there and you're facing the wall and you do a behind the back pass with your right hand. It bounces off the wall. You catch it, and then you do a behind the back pass with the left hand, and you just keep doing that, up against the wall. And there's like 4 of us standing there doing this. And I'm just thinking to myself, wouldn't we learn more if we just like split up 2-on-2 and just played a game of 2-on-2?
Yeah.
Where we're dribbling, passing, shooting, playing defense, setting picks, making cuts, and all that, rather than just the 4 of us standing like 5 feet apart, just doing behind the back passes with alternate hands up against the wall. It's like, how about if we actually play? Crazy idea.
What about Walter Davis? What was
Walter Davis was the greatest shooting guard to come out of North Carolina before some dude from Wilmington. He was massive scorer, could fill it up, go to the hole, he could hit the jumper, but the mid range was really his thing. The dribble pull up, super quick. So he'd get you moving sideways, and as soon as your shoulder dipped and you stretched your foot out, he'd pull up, which meant he shot many, many shots with no hand in his face because he was so quick with that pull up. And his career was derailed by drugs, as so many in the late 70s, early 80s were. But, I mean, even, Michael Jordan speaks so highly of him. And Jordan actually tried to get him on the Bulls. But that's,
Yeah, it looks like he played the majority of his career in Phoenix.
Yeah, with Phoenix.
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe he got to Phoenix when Dennis Johnson was Phoenix, was like the leading scorer for Phoenix. And before being traded Boston.
Yeah.
But the
Now, what about,
Colangelos in Phoenix have always believed in guard play.
Yeah.
Going back in the 70s, the Van Arsdale brothers, who were two guards that nobody today really has any idea who they are. But the Van Arsdale brothers, Gar Hurd, then you go on to Walter Davis, Dennis Johnson, Gail Goodrich, Kevin Johnson in the 90s. Then, moving on to Steve Nash. Now who is it? Is it Booker?
Yeah, Booker's there now.
I feel like I'm forgetting one. After Nash and before Booker. Maybe I'm not. Has Booker been around that long? Maybe it just went straight to Booker. My gosh.
He's been around for a while now. Not forever. Probably, I think it's something like 7 years.
Really?
Yeah, he's been around a while. He's not new.
I kind of think like for some reason, I remember him from like 2015 or 16. Maybe I'm thinking of someone else. But anyway, you get the idea. Phoenix has always believed in guard play, and playing that style of ball, where a lot of
he's been around since 2016. Yeah, looking at it now.
So it was just Booker. Okay, all right.
Yeah,
for some reason I was thinking there was someone in between because Booker just doesn't. He seems like he's perennially like 24 years old to me.
Yeah.
And I actually played against his dad at one point.
Oh, cool. But in where or how?
Well, in college, his dad went to Vanderbilt.
Okay.
Barry Booker.
Okay.
They had a great team in the early 90s. You had Barry Goheen, Barry Booker, the big man. They had a big man. I believe he actually played for Chicago for a year or two, Cornette.
Okay.
Very strong, 6'9", 6'10" guy.
What?
Be perfect. Welcome. I think he meant to go into his own show. Maybe not. I don't know. Be Perfect's having a show in 15 minutes on Lights Out Sports Debates. Anyway. Maybe.
Yeah, Will Perdue was there too. I'm thinking Will Perdue had just left, I thought. Once again, I'm sorry. I don't I just talk what I know and remember. I don't Google search all of this. But I think Will Perdue had just left and Cornette became the starter in the middle. Because I didn't play against Will Perdue. I know that. So I think he was already gone.
Yeah.
But in any case, I mean, in Portland, you had Terry Porter. You had guys like Golden State. You had Winston Garland. There are so many guards in the 80s that have just been forgotten. You have so many guys that guys like Johnny Moore in San Antonio that were just absolute demons, destroying people for like 2 or 3 years, and then they'd either have health issues, substance abuse issues, or injuries that they just fall by the wayside as far as their legacies. I mean, their names are still in the record books and in the annuals. You can still go back and see them play, but it's just one of those things that the players that are forgotten. You get guys like in New York, you had Rory Sparrow, Villanova guy, Big East, those types of guys. In Boston, you had Danny Ainge, who you can talk about whatever you want. He, on paper, is the greatest athlete to ever play in the NBA. But obviously nobody thinks of Danny Ainge that way. You'll have all the casual fans screaming, Michael Jordan, LeBron James, all of this. Remember, Michael Jordan tried to play minor league baseball before Danny Ainge ever went to the NBA. He was playing Major League Baseball for the Toronto Blue Jays in a starter in the major leagues, while also playing shooting guard and small forward at Brigham Young, and was College Player of the Year. People forget about that with Danny Ainge. He was College Player of the Year, 1981, I believe. And he's the only person in American sports history to be first team All-American in high school in all 3 major sports. He was first team All-American in football, baseball, and basketball. So he is legitimately, on paper, the greatest athlete to ever play in the NBA.
What about Rauf for Tayshaun?
Chris Jackson, Mahmoud Abdul Rauf. He was blackballed. He was, he had all-star level ability. I was at a game. He was being covered by Doug Overton, who came out of LaSalle, who was at one point the all-time assist leader in NCAA basketball. His record was broke by Bobby Hurley, I believe. And I believe Overton beat Chris Corchiani, I think maybe, his record. But Doug Overton was the starting point guard for the Bullets, and Mahmoud Abdul Rauf came into the Capitol Center and just put on a show. It was just crazy. His quickness and that jumper from the top of the key was just unreal. But
yeah, if you were to match up again? If you had a time machine, we're playing what ifs now. If you had a time machine, some of these forgotten NBA point guards that we've been discussing, how well did they match up with today's point guards? I know you don't really follow that much, but do you think that they would be as competitive, or do you have an opinion on who would be better?
Well, they all would be competitive because they were all the greatest in the world at what they did. Once again, for casuals out there, human evolution has not changed in thousands of years. Okay? If you want to sit there and say, oh, well, Kyrie Irving could do what Bob Cousy did, but Bob Cousy couldn't do what Kyrie does. Yeah, he could. If he grew up in this time and in the same era, playing by the same rules, and was allowed to use the same moves every day for 10 years, yeah, he would. Because they were the best. They were the pinnacle of human potential. The rules decide what you can and cannot do. When you see guys scoring, Michael Adams was actually one of my favorite players. I got to briefly meet him at a basketball camp, but I never got on the court with him. Hated him in college. Couldn't stand him at Boston College. Him and Patrick Ewing got into a fight, and I wanted Patrick Ewing to just step on him. But when he went to Denver, averaged 30 a game. First player to come out of the developmental league and become an all-star, by the way.
Oh,
Michael
wow.
Adams. Came out of the CBA, which was the D League back in the 80s, and became an all-star. First one ever. Then he went to the Bullets. And actually, he had the great year in Denver. Averaged 30 a game, did not make the all-star team because, like I said, he just came up from the D League and hadn't made a name for himself. So he had a great second half of the year. He wasn't elected to the all-star game till the next year after he had went to the Bullets.
Yeah. They got I see that. Yeah, it said that he averaged 26.5, but I'm sure he averaged 30 for some part of that season.
Yeah,
But
he
then,
was
yeah.
averaging 30. I believe it was at the All-Star break, and people were talking about, you got this guy averaging 30, and he's not even in the All-Star game.
Yeah.
But it's because he had just, he wasn't even on a lot of the ballots, the paper ballots that they had back then. It wasn't online. We didn't have that stuff. It was a paper ballot you had to fill out. And his name wasn't even on the ballot.
Yeah. I remember going to baseball games. That's where my dad took me to a couple baseball games when I was a kid, and I remember the paper ballots.
Mm-hmm.
You had to go punch it in.
Can you fill out a scorecard? Can you fill out a baseball scorecard?
Oh my God, I haven't even thought about baseball since I was that age. I had a bad incident where I had a coach that broke my finger. I got a scar on my finger when I was 9 years old. He just pegged the ball at me. I caught the ball, but he was a real dick. Like, looking back on it as an adult, I would have not liked him. But anyway,
when I was a kid, we actually learned in PE class how to properly fill out a baseball scorecard.
Yeah.
Which is like a scientific level achievement all by itself to do it correctly.
Yep. Yeah. It says, I'm looking at his stats right now. Basketball historian. I always forget which one is. I think you're Hakeem Olajuwon, right? I don't remember what your other handle is because it goes back and forth. But yeah, it says for his 91 season, he averaged 8.5 3-point attempts per game.
The coolest thing about Michael Adams, I'm right there. My tickets, I'm right there at the sideline. And he's coming. Bullets are playing at my end of the court, when this was going on. And he went right. When they talk about, Jordan couldn't go left and all that, Michael Adams could not go left.
Oh. But
the problem is you couldn't stop him from going right. And he was being covered. And I can't remember who was covering him. Oh, man. But they were playing him to the right. Like they were literally standing sideways on his right side. And there's a direct lane to the basket on his left. And he wouldn't take it. Instead, he bowled his way through, wrapping around the right, taking 4 extra dribbles, tiptoeing the sideline, almost stepping on my foot, just to prove to the guy that he was going to beat him to the right no matter what.
Yeah.
It was kind of funny, really. But no matter what they did, he would just go right.
You remember when you made the kid cry about when you said who was it? Daryl Dawkins? No, not Daryl Dawkins, excuse me. Clyde Drexler. When he's like, oh, Clyde Drexler couldn't go left either. And you said, well, that makes him even greater because he had got all those points by just going right.
Yeah.
And then he cried. Yeah.
You just prove the point of why he's so great. That's like Jordan said that I forget the exact circumstance. I just read it the other day. I went down a rabbit hole about the whole 1999 thing, and you have all the casual fans saying, "Oh, well, if his ego hadn't have broken up the Bulls, they would have won again in '99." No, they wouldn't have, because Michael Jordan severed a tendon on his index finger and had to have tendon reattached, and he even admitted he could not palm the ball like he could when he was younger, which was such a big part of his game.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't have even been available for most of the season. Yeah. But they don't want to hear that. They want to live with the mythology of Krause was evil, like Krause broke up the team by himself, like it wasn't the owner's idea.
Yeah.
Like the owner has to sign off on all that stuff. The owner broke up the team, but you'll never hear Jordan complain about Reinsdorf, because Jordan his goal from the very beginning was to own an NBA franchise, and you can't own an NBA franchise unless you're voted in by the other NBA owners. And if you would have thrown Reinsdorf under the bus for that, he would have never gotten the Bobcats. So there's a lot of diplomacy going there. Krause was paid to take the fall. That was his job. He didn't make those decisions. Reinsdorf made those decisions.
What about Jim Paxson?
Well, Basketball Historian has a great point. People always talk about how Portland messed up by not drafting Jordan. No, they didn't, because John Paxson, Jim Paxson's brother, was first team All-NBA for Portland, and they had Clyde Drexler.
Yeah.
So regardless of skill level, why would you draft a third shooting guard when you're already paying two? One is first team All-NBA and looks like it, at that point he was headed for the Hall of Fame. And you got Clyde Drexler, who ended up a Dream Teamer and Hall of Famer and champion. So what, people talk about all these reasons about not drafting Jordan. Why would they? They already had the first team All-NBA shooting guard on their team. People forget about that.
Yeah. All right, Rex. I think it's about that time. You have any final words for the people and talking about these historical players that often get forgotten about or ignored for being all-time greats? What are some last words for the people?
Well, once again, just go back. What's that website? Basketball Reference. Go back and look at some of these teams that you've heard about, like that were abnormal teams that were like when talking, Portland got to the finals twice with Clyde Drexler and no other All-Star or no other like not only no other All-Star player, but without any other like award-winning player of any kind. He more than anyone, like, single-handedly took that team to the finals. Okay, well, who were the other players on that team? When you hear about, the Bulls, like the early Bulls, so many people talk about Scottie Pippen as being, the number 2 to Jordan, but Scottie Pippen isn't the second best scorer behind Jordan. The highest scoring teammate Jordan ever had was Orlando Woolrich, who played college ball with Jim Paxson, by the way. And, look at these other guys. Who was the point guard on those early Bulls teams? And the leading scorer from the year before Jordan came in the backcourt, Quentin Daly. I believe he went to Alabama. But, learn the names, learn these guys. You know, go down the rabbit hole. You know, learn who these guys were and what they were able to do. You know the names, the great names. Like everyone knows Cornbread Maxwell as the Finals MVP from '81, but how many of you actually know his game?
Yeah.
When you look at, and you know about these teams, you know about the '83 Sixers with Moses and Dr. J. Okay, well, do you know anything about Andrew Toney, who actually is the one that got them to the finals? The Boston Strangler? Do you know the second level guys? This is why I hate the GOAT debate, because 80% of talk on YouTube about basketball is LeBron or Jordan. We all know about LeBron and Jordan. We know every single stat about LeBron and Jordan. Everyone does. Even people that don't like basketball know their stats, know what they've done, because it's all that's talked about. Forget about that. Talk about some of the other 5,000 players that have been in the NBA. Because when you learn about the quote-unquote average NBA player, which there's nothing average about any NBA player, it'll actually help your game. You can't play like Jordan. You can't play like LeBron. But you may be able to play like Kyle Macy, Jim Paxson. If you're a big guy, you may be able to play like Dave Feidel, Will Perdue. Learn something from their games. Paul McKeskey. These guys that play in the NBA for 10 years, retire millionaires, you barely know their names. But they're NBA players. They're some of the greatest players who have ever picked up a ball. And they did it in a way that you can relate to.
Well, thank you everyone for watching. Thank Rex for your insight into these great basketball players. I think we got some A+ questions out here today. Some A+ comments as well.
Oh, comment. Yeah, I was about to say some great comments about the lockout. Casual Hoops Head, the lockout season would have been a brutal schedule. The problem with the lockout season is that's why Reinsdorf didn't bring the Bulls back, because he was on the ownership committee. He knew there was going to be a lockout. And NBA players have guaranteed contracts. If the owners decide to lock them out, you still have to pay them. It's not a strike where the employee isn't showing up for work, so you don't pay them. This was a lockout. They have guaranteed contracts. And Reinsdorf wasn't going to pay $44 million to re-sign everybody when there was no guarantee they were even going to play a single game. Instead, he took that money, he put it into his baseball team. They won World Series 6 years later, just the same amount of time it took them to build up with Jordan to a championship team. And now he doubled his revenue streams. He had 2 championships, and he goes down in history as the only owner to win a championship in 2 of the major sports. Because winning a 7th championship with the Bulls would mean nothing. They were already selling all the Jordan jerseys, the Bulls merchandise. That was all selling off the shelves anyway. So, and winning a 7th championship and a 4th in a row changes nothing historically. They were still in 3rd place behind LA and Boston, and they weren't catching them. And winning 4 in a row is only half of the Celtics' 8 in a row. So historically, you're not winning anything. But you could possibly lose $42 million. That's why they broke the team up. Just like in LA with Jeannie Buss, when they say, whoa, why'd they get LeBron? When they signed LeBron, the net worth of the Lakers jumped $1 billion when he signed that contract. Now, for the Buss family, they have no other businesses. They were separate from every other ownership in the NBA by the team was their sole income. So when they signed LeBron, their personal wealth jumped up $1 billion. Then last year, when it became evident that this is the end of LeBron's career, he's either retiring outright or he's going to end up finishing somewhere else, Jeannie Buss cashed out, sold the team, left with much more money than she inherited. It's a business. And that's why most of these moves are made. Fans don't understand that.
It's like parents. But anyway, yeah, I gotta get going. I'm gonna try to call in real fast to Travis's show, and then I gotta actually do work on the weekend from home. So real homework. It's a bummer, but that's what I get for trying to do everything. Anyway.
Well, if I can make one last quick comment to basketball historian who made the last comment, Bobby Jones.
Yes.
Bobby Jones won the high jump champion in state of North Carolina in high school, beating Bob McAdoo. They went head to head 2 years in a row, each won one, and then they ended up being teammates at North Carolina and then playing against each other in the NBA.
Yeah.
How many basketball players today you see that are state high jump champions? But they want to talk about how they're so much more athletic today.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well,
But
thank you,
my
everyone.
kids are outside, like playing in the snow. So,
yeah. Thank you, everyone, for watching, and learn the game.